This week, I introduced my resolution to empower the United States to stop all payments on debt owed to China equal to the full cost of our pandemic response. Hey everybody, as always, I hope you've had a great week. I'm here with an update on what has happened in Congress, and I'd love to talk to you about three things: China, Lake Okeechobee discharges, and executive orders. So let's get right to it. First of all, just weeks ago, all anyone could talk about was Chinese spy balloons, and rightly so. It was a blatant violation of U.S. airspace and should have been shot down before it ever got to Alaska. But here's the thing. The spy balloon was far from an isolated incident. China has one goal: overtake the United States of America. Whether it's economically or militarily or technologically, Xi Jinping is determined to make his nation number one and see America fall. They're willing to work with Russia, Iran, anybody that they can to make that happen. One example that's not talked about a lot, but that has a major impact, is in the telecom space. 99% of online traffic relies on underseas fiber optics cables. Right now, the United States of America is controlling that industry, but China is trying to play catch up. There's no reason to make it easier for an aggressor like China to play catch up, which is why I introduced a bill to prevent the American technology or materials that are needed for these cables from being sold to China, or from allowing Chinese companies to buy up American companies so that they have the technology. So take a listen. Year after year, we see an increasing amount of Chinese companies investing in the technology needed to bring this to fruition. The exact same Chinese Communist Party that wants to see America topple and communism on top, whether that's just for China or for Russia or for other dangerous allies that they have made, that cannot be the entities that we have to look to get the equipment, the parts, the technology that we need to be able to communicate across the globe. So I'm glad to report that this bill passed the Foreign Affairs Committee. Also this week, on the topic of China, the Department of Energy released a new report that showed that it is very likely that COVID-19 was the result of a lab leak. For years now, the Chinese Communist Party and the Wuhan Institute of Virology have been hiding behind the conspiracy theory label and lied to cover up their role in the pandemic. It has to stop. The pandemic cost trillions and trillions of dollars, and more importantly, millions of lives. This administration has been covering up for China. They've been going after people that have been talking about this coming out of a lab and not just some accident from some wet market. This week, I introduced my resolution to empower the United States to stop all payments on debt owed to China equal to the full cost of our pandemic response. China needs to be held responsible. They need to pay up. It's not likely that they're going to pay up with a yen, a pound sterling, an ounce of gold bullion, a dollar, a euro, or anything else. And if President Biden won't make them, then Congress needs to. On a local front, I have an update on the discharges from Lake Okeechobee. On January 22, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers started releasing water from Lake Okeechobee into our coastal estuaries in an effort to preemptively lower the levels of Lake Okeechobee ahead of the summertime rainy season, when that lake gets even more disgusting than it is and typically turns toxic and green. Now, to be clear, the only acceptable number of discharges for the Treasure Coast and the northern estuaries is 0. But the thought was that freshwater discharges, while still bad, would be less harmful now in the cooler winter months than discharge in the summertime just before rainy season, when it's hot and the lake is typically covered in toxic blue-green algal blooms. Now, here's the problem. The lake is already having blooms form on it. Earlier this week, aerial photos showed a small bloom forming near the Port Mayaca Lock and Dam. That's right where the water from Lake Okeechobee starts to enter the St. Lucie and move into the coastal estuaries. Thankfully, the Army Corps of Engineers, they made the right call immediately, and they stopped the discharges until that bloom dissipates. Here's what we know about that very obviously. It's winter months, it's cooler, and the lake is already forming these toxic blooms. We argue this year after year. The lake is toxic. discharging that toxic water into our coastal communities that do not need the water, do not benefit from the water coming out of the lake, and are nothing but harm from that water, all for one reason, just to help the sugar industry south of Lake Okeechobee, makes absolutely no sense. So before we talk about doling out benefits from Lake Okeechobee for other stakeholders like the sugar industry, getting them more water from Lake Okeechobee, keeping the lakes at an even higher level, which is more harmful to Lake Okeechobee and results in more discharges to everybody that does not need them, the mission first has to be do no harm. That's what I will continue fighting for. Do no harm to all of the other entities, and then you could talk about giving the sugar industry some water. But until that time, they shouldn't be getting any more benefit. Now, finally, a quick update on what we worked on the House floor this week. We passed a bill called the Rein In Act, and it's a simple piece of legislation that's designed to put a check and balance on the administration that's been spending your money like it grows on a tree. Now, since taking office, President Biden has issued more than 100 executive orders totaling more than $1.5 trillion. So while families are being forced to spend $5 on eggs, that would be an understatement, right? Maybe $5 on gas at different times a year, Joe Biden has spent $1.5 trillion all by himself without the consent of Congress or we the people. He's added to the national debt and sent inflation even higher through the roof. The Rein In Inflation Act requires that the administration publish the inflationary impact of executive orders before enacting an executive order. This bill passed and is now headed to the Senate and then hopefully to the president's desk. And when something becomes law, it's not like when a bureaucrat does it. That means that Joe Biden has to adhere to what that law is. And when the next president is a Republican president, that Republican president will have to adhere to what that law is. The American people, they deserve to know how the decisions made in the White House will affect their bottom line. And I'm proud that the House Republicans have again delivered on our commitment to America, making government accountable to the people. As always, I just want to say that it is an honor to serve you. I look forward to seeing you all around home. I wish you all the best. You all take care. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.